RevelatorAlf. Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. Hope you're enjoying the channel and the series of videos. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell, like and share, leave those comments, and check out the website RevelatorAlf.com, where you'll find the links to Patreon and PayPal too. So, in this video, I'm talking, well, on a very somber note, I should say, about motorcycle losses or motorcycle job losses within the industry because primarily of the coronavirus and how it's affected the economy on a global scale. Certain manufacturers are already laying off jobs in certain quarters. Harley-Davidson have been doing it. We've just got news here in the UK that Triumph motorcycles will be laying off globally 400 jobs. That's actually 250 in the UK. Now, they put this down to a reduce in market sales share in various markets, primarily in Europe, and around about 40 to 60% in some cases. So, you know, that's a dramatic loss for a smaller motorcycle company. And, you know, we've got to look at a global scale of the likes of Honda, Suzuki, Kawasaki. They've all had reducing sales. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's translated into job losses for those big companies, but certainly they're all feeling the pinch. Indeed, even in India right now, many of the motorcycle manufacturers are struggling with their sales because of the coronavirus. And we're talking about millions of units per year, and they're seeing dramatic losses there as well. In fact, it's become a bit of a political hot potato in that country amongst certainly CEOs of motorcycle manufacturers and other manufacturers as well, and the government because of the lockdown restrictions that were imposed and how it's affected businesses. It's never nice talking about job losses, but I think we have to face a reality. And in the motorcycle industry, in the automotive industry in general, I think there's going to be some heavy losses here. The writing's on the wall. Now, we always knew that coronavirus and the COVID-19 and the way all the globe, the countries were dealing with it would be the right thing to do to stop the spread. But we also knew that the massive knock-on effect is the economic recession, the implications on the economies of all countries, but also micro economies of businesses and corporations. In fact, many economists are now talking about an economic pandemic. And no more so is that going to be found within the motorcycle industry. Depending on what kind of motorcycles are being produced by which company, they could either be seen as a luxury item or a necessary means of motorcycle transport, of cheap transport. Some companies may suffer more. And I don't want to be the prophet of doom here, but the likes of Harley-Davidson, who are selling more expensive motorcycles, you could say, or more aspirational motorcycles, they may see a drop in sales. In fact, they have done, haven't they? But we could say that right across the board of all motorcycle manufacturers, where they've seen a dramatic decrease in sales of their signature models, their high-end models. Now, the cheaper motorcycles, yes, they're still selling. And as markets start to open up again, we're going to see these motorcycle manufacturers open up their dealerships all over the world. And then there will be a slow recovery. But it's in the meantime. What will happen to people's jobs in the meantime? It comes down to cash flow. It comes down to profit and loss. Can these corporations, can these businesses, any business, any manufacturer, can they ride the wave, as it were, or the trough in this case? Can they ride it until they get out to the other side and they can see calm waters? Some may be able to do that, but in fact, many won't. And I bring you this video not out of joy. It gives me no joy to do this at all. But I think it's important to really factor this into our thinking when we bash motorcycle manufacturers in the future about what they're doing. There's no doubt they're going to be struggling themselves, and the people, at the coalfaces that were, their jobs are going to be on the line. You're not going to employ people on any kind of production line if you're not selling any of that product. If the product sales stop or dramatically reduce, there's no need to keep on producing them. That's just the way of the world. So it doesn't matter how much government intervention comes in, how much help a government will help industry or individual workers. That can only go on for so long. So we're kind of reaching that point near enough where actually corporations are going to have to fend for themselves now. Businesses are going to have to fend for themselves now. Will that mean more job losses? Possibly, yes. But if we see the likes of Harley-Davidson, of Triumph, there'll be other smaller motorcycle manufacturers, no doubt, all across the world, who will have reducing sales and who will be cutting their workforce. Now, this does not mean that after they've recovered a bit, they may not re-employ these workers. That may indeed be the case. But right now, we're seeing the first signs of job losses as a direct result of coronavirus and how each economy has been suffering as a result. We hope, fingers crossed, that there can be some kind of speedy recovery, but this is going to be a long recovery. And this really depends how we as individuals are coping within our own economics, our own domestic economics. Can we afford to buy new motorcycles? Can we afford to keep running them? Are we going to go for a cheaper option, or are we going to still go for our more expensive items? That's down to an individual case, that's down to a regional case, local industry, that kind of thing. But we can already see certain areas in this country, but also around the world, where the local population is heavily dependent on one particular industry. And if that fails, or if that struggles, then the whole region becomes affected. Not only of people who are directly employed by that local industry, but all supporting industries and businesses that help to fuel that, to help service that industry, but also service the people who work there. The knock-on effect is massive. Who's next? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the Italian motorcycle manufacturers will be dropping jobs very soon. Also, some of the Japanese as well, Korean manufacturers, they'll be looking at as well. There are reports of this kind of mini downsizing of some of those, but it's really in the balance. It really depends on those companies, how they're able to re-emerge, how they're able to open up dealerships, and will people have confidence to go and buy the products. It's going to be one of those things we're going to find out in the next month or two. How many jobs will be lost? Lots and lots. Exact figures, who knows? Where those figures will be most, who knows? But certainly we're feeling it in the UK. You would imagine the United States as well for Harley-Davidson, possibly Indian as well. But if you're looking at smaller industries or smaller businesses like custom bike builders, custom bike shops, that kind of thing, they will suffer as well, certainly at the high-end market. The only way that some of those businesses will survive is if they can diversify or focus their attention on producing cheaper parts for motorcycles. Indeed, I've had conversations with custom bike builders, you may have seen it on the podcast as well, where actually the amount of custom bikes that they build per year has dramatically reduced over the last 10 years anyway. This will just douse the flames even more. So their only ability to stay in business will be to just continue producing parts, custom parts for existing customers or any future customers. Will that mean that manufacturers such as Harley-Davidson, Triumph, Ducati, BMW, will they have to reduce their workforces? Possibly. Will they have to cut some of the models that they produced? Possibly. That doesn't mean that'll be infinitum, but it could be as a temporary measure until things can recover again. Will they start to refocus, re-energize their attention, as it were, onto specific models that will cater to lower incomes and the need for cheap transportation? Possibly. And maybe that is where the diversity in model range is really going to pay off. And that's where some of the larger motorcycle manufacturers, or those manufacturers that only produce small displacement engines, those are the ones that will keep their workforce employed. It's not looking good. The horizon is bleak, I'm afraid, for this. Not only motorcycle manufacturing, but all automotive manufacturing. In fact, all manufacturing, until there is some kind of recovery. Now, it could take 2 or 3 months, of course. It could take a year, 2 years. But when the industry for high-end motorcycles especially was already on a gradual spiral downwards, this was the last thing that particular sector needed. Certain manufacturers, namely Harley-Davidson, you could say Triumph as well, or Ducati, for example, possibly BMW as well. Indian, you could put into there as well. Those manufacturers that are predominantly selling higher end motorcycles, they may struggle. They may struggle in the next year or two. That may translate into jobs, that may translate into models, and that might translate into actual overall survivability as well. Let's see what happens. But say it's if there's any more news on this, I'll bring this to you, of course. But right now there are job losses in the UK, certainly around the world that's being felt. Certain markets are being slower to open than others. You might say in your area, no, sales are fantastic, dealerships are still selling great. That might be the case, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a company manufacturing the product is still doing well. That doesn't mean that there won't be job losses at particular plants, where they close plants and centralize their operation. We've already seen that with Harley-Davidson even before coronavirus. So, you know, these kind of things happen. It happens in industry anyway, of course, but there might be a lot more of that happening very soon. Well, there you go. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell, like and share, leave those comments, check out the website at RevelatorAlf.com, where you find the links to Patreon and PayPal too. In the comments below, let us know what you think about any job losses in the motorcycle industry as a whole. Do you think it's going to be affected in your region? Do you think, well, actually it's a dealership thing, they're still selling motorcycles, it's not that bad at all? But I think I want you to kind of understand, actually, just because a dealership is selling motorcycles in one particular region does not necessarily mean that the company as a whole, the manufacturing company, is doing well. We know that job losses will be there. We know that there will be more in certain sectors than in others, but hopefully there'll be a recovery. Do you think they can recover? Do you think people will still be able to get their jobs back? And do you think actually companies will be treating the employees fairly during this period? Or will there be a lot of bitter pills to swallow and maybe a very bitter aftertaste? Catch you again. Ta-ra.